Nrsimhananda Prabhu and Vishnu Murti Prabhu, please accept my humble obeisances. All glories to Srila Prabhupada.
Hare Krishna.
Hare Krishna, and accept mine.
So good to see you both. This is part of our continuing series, and in fact, this will be the last installment of 9 chapters in exploring the position that Srila Prabhupada has in ISKCON as first the founder acharya, and then the second, the preeminent Shiksha Guru for all devotees for all time in ISKCON. And so we thank you very much for joining us. The GBC, hang on for a second, please. Sorry. The GBC Strategic Planning Team is doing a couple of things during this period of time. One is the COVID-19, and we are sharing information about the disease, providing suggestions on how devotees can protect themselves. It's a rough time for ISKCON because it's also a rough time for the world. And if we were to do an actual count of the amount of devotees that have caught this disease, and unfortunately some of us have left as a result of this disease, actually what we're finding is that it's somewhere in the neighborhood of 4 to 5 times higher than the general population in terms of people who are catching it. So we ask our devotees to be diligent in protecting themselves and protecting each other from this disease. But in addition, what the SPT is doing is just bringing together topics of general interest, spiritual interest, through interviews of devotees. We've done maybe 175 interviews so far. And this chapter is the preeminent Shiksha Guru one. So we thank you so much for being part of it. Maybe we'll start with Nrsimhananda Prabhu. Prabhu, if you could just give us a little bit of your background and your famous devotee, as is Vishnu Murti Prabhu, but maybe some of our audience doesn't know so much of you. And maybe you could just end that with what your most current service is.
Well, first of all, I am just very honored to be included amongst the August Assembly that you put together. And I hope that I can offer something as even one small bit as profound and moving as all of the other speakers. So by Krishna's grace, maybe something can come out. I, of course, joined in Chicago, got a Back to Godhead 3 days before I left London. And by the time the plane landed, I didn't go home. I just went to the temple. There's an address there in the magazine. And my sister had forgotten to pick me up. And some girl said, "Do you need a ride?" And I said, "Oh, I'm going to the Hare Krishna place to check it out." And she said, "Oh, I've always wanted to go there." And so she drove me, and I ended up staying. So that was my beginning. And then New Vrindavan, New York, when Prabhupada was there, worked at the press, came out to LA when Prabhupada was was supposed to make all the Bhagavatams on film. We only did 2. It was a great experience to be with him, but he didn't like not speaking to an audience. He didn't like just speaking to a camera lens. So he stopped it after 2, much to my disappointment. But later on, I was able to establish ISKCON Television, and 1979 we launched and carried that service for about 25 years to where it culminated with the complete Srila Prabhupada DVD library in 20 languages.
Wow.
So, and now I'm engaged in this Sabba service. That's my track records in a thumbnail.
Beautiful brief history. And we'll come back to this Sava. I'm not sure how many devotees know about it. I think that we're going to find that very interesting. Vishnu Murti Prabhu, please give us some background from your holy self.
Okay, I'm originally from New Zealand. I left New Zealand when I was 16, looking for something very valuable in life, which I knew was out there, but I didn't have in my possession. I actually heard about the devotees first when I was in Morocco in 1978, in the winter of 77. And I'd actually just started to pray to God for a guru. And then I heard about the devotees. So I ended up meeting the devotees by going to Bhaktivedanta Mana.
Ah,
And I was very impressed. You know, they had answers to all my questions. But I went out, I had to think about it. And about a month later, on my night before I left London to go back to Holland, where I was living, I went back to the manor. And I got the association again of the devotees. I was very happy with that. And they tried to get me to stay. They wanted me to join. You know, they said, "You're an intelligent boy, you should stay." And I said, "Well, I'm going to India, so I can meet you there." Because in 77, I just about made it to India. I was in Afghanistan, but I came back.
oh,
So I said, "Can I have a Bhagavad Gita?" And they said, "Yes." So I took a Bhagavad Gita. And I said, "Can I have some beads?" And the devotee, he went to give me the beads, and then he pulled them back. It was very interesting. He said, "I'm only going to give you these beads if you promise to chant every day."
mm,
So I thought about that. You know, I respected the devotees. I didn't want to make a false promise. So I actually said, "I promise." And I took the beads. So I went back to Holland. That's where I was staying with friends. And I chanted 4 rounds the next morning. And I read the Bhagavad Gita the whole day. And the next day I chanted 8 Bhagavad Gita, 12 Bhagavad Gita, 16. In 4 days I was chanting 16 rounds. And reading Bhagavad Gita, I stayed there for 2 weeks. And basically from reading the Bhagavad Gita, meeting Prabhupada in the form of the Bhagavad Gita, I became what I considered to be a free man. I mean, I had to find out later. There's still some work to do to become free. And anyway, so I started going to India, but I got caught by Prabhupada and the devotees in the south of France, and that's where I joined.
mm,
So I joined in the summer of 78.
mm.
And I was very happy to have joined the mission. And, you know, I went out and distributed books for many years, Prabhupada's books. And they asked me then to take care of some management in New Mayapur with Indradumna Swami. And, you know, up until 1986, I was distributing books. I was in the ashram completely, not even in the ashram, traveling. And in 86, our movement went through an upheaval. And
Yeah.
my initiating guru, he left. And so I went for a sabbatical. I went to India. And in 87, I was in Mayapur for the 50-man committee. And I was associating with devotees, just reflecting on, you know, what's the next stage of my life. And in July of 87, that's when I got a seed, a complete direction of what I should be doing with my life. And that was when I found Srila Prabhupada in the form of his letters. They had just been printed. And 5 sets had arrived in London. I was in London and I took a set and I read.
Was this the Shikshamrita?
No, Shikshamrita came in 92. This is the 5 volumes.
Okay. Yeah. I have those. Yeah. Okay, I remember.
And I read them threadbare. And I created my own Shikshamrita, actually. And I was overwhelmed of Prabhupada's presence, you know, as an individual, because we were, you know, we didn't meet Prabhupada. So, you know, Prabhupada was there. He was distant from us because there was zonal acharya years. We had to please Prabhupada through the acharya, the present acharya. Yes, we had his mission. Yes, we understood his power, but we didn't have a direct connection with him. And those letters really gave me a direct connection. I saw his compassion, his brilliance, his encouragement, his personality, you know, because his personality is hidden many times in his letters. Anyway, that set in motion a whole direction, which was 32 years ago, of me deciding that it was very important to give Prabhupada to the devotees, give Prabhupada to the non-devotees.
And this is then the seminal birth of Vanipedia.
Yeah, I worked with the archives from 88 until 92, and then I started the college here in Radhadesh, worked with devotees for that, thinking that would help. And then at a certain time, yeah, Vanipedia started in 2007.
We'll come back and drill on vanipedia more. Let's go back to Nrsimhananda Prabhu. On this sabba, I would imagine many devotees don't know what sabba is. What is it?
Well, Sava was formed by the GBC in 2018. It is the Spiritual Advisors Bhagwat Assembly. And it was born from Srila Prabhupada's idea that the temple presidents should review all of the GBC resolutions and send any back with which they had some issues. But that temple president's group, which was idea was set forth in 76, and then it met in 77. And a few years afterwards, dissipated under the zonal acharya regimes. And it was brought back to life by the strategic planning team and presented in a very detailed form to the GBC, which discussed it and adopted it in a resolution. And the purpose of it is to facilitate cooperation, not just to be a check and a balance on the resolutions, but it goes further in that it facilitates communication, working relationships, cooperation, and it also can make proposals of its own to the GBC without a GBC sponsor. So it has a lot of not legislative influence, but it has access. It's one thing if one person is coming to the GBC with a proposal, gets 3 sponsors, gets it seen. It's another when it's a body that has been appointed from various national councils, the SGGS, the Women's Ministry, the Youth Ministry, and has representatives from all over the world and frankly from many different cultures. So and we have our own webpage now that's available. You can communicate with the Sabha, various issues that you think are not being handled. But I can say that we have been discussing the issue of Srila Prabhupada's preeminent Shiksha position now for well over a year, looking to find some means and way to present to the GBC a positive, proactive, inclusive program to get Srila Prabhupada's position firmly established, because if there's any backsliding, which we sometimes see in diminishing that position, we want to always have this process that's ongoing. So in that sense, I'd like to kind of talk a little bit about what we've talked about within the summer.
Yeah.
In making a film, you have a character and you have 5 ways of learning about a character. By what they look like, what they say, with whom they associate, what they do, and how they think. And that's how you find out and fall in love with, or somehow don't fall in love with, a character. And so within this work in progress of establishing Srila Prabhupada's preeminent position as the preeminent Siksha Guru, we have this, it's a work in progress. And I know many GBCs that are concerned about it. So it's not that it's somehow resisted, but we need to get the tools to do it. And in order to get the tools to do it, what I'd like to concentrate on in this final episode of this wonderful series is, where and what can we do to go forward on this path more quickly? Because in 2027, that's the 50th anniversary of Prabhupada's disappearance. And by that time, we would really like to see a very firmly fixed program of keeping Srila Prabhupada's position. It's already there. It's not like, oh, we have to put him in that position of that Shiksha who's preeminent for all of us. No, he's there, but it's recognizing that he's there. That's the real issue. So, sometimes people point the finger at you. So you're not doing this, or you're not doing enough of that. But in fact, we may just be covering, like sometimes we cover the clouds, cover the moon. The moon is always shining. Prabhupada's always shining. So one of the things we talked about was that there's nothing that can stop the disciple from loving Srila Prabhupada if he can get all of the information. And that information right now is not all available. For example, that wonderful document of 2014 about Prabhupada as the founder, the founding document of Srila Prabhupada's position paper. It's only translated into a handful of languages. How many years now it's been? So one of the things we talked about in the sub is, what's up with that? And how can we start to get, even working ourselves, how can we get that into more languages? We even think in terms of the Bhagavad Gita. I think the Bhagavad Gita, I had a note here of how many translations there were. 60 some. What was that, Vishnu? Of the Bhagavad
I think
Gita?
it's over 60 it translated in over 60 languages. I think it might be 64.
We think we do one new language every 10 years. But the Bible's got over 638, and they do 10 a month. I mean, it's if you want to have people understand Krishna consciousness, get to know Srila Prabhupada through his teachings, that's certainly an area that we can improve in and develop a system. It's not just, oh yeah, let's do that. We can suggest a system for doing that. Now, if you do, it's funny how the numbers work. Prabhupada wrote about 19 million words, sorry. And if let's say you were to look up on Vanipedia, or look up reading my books as a phrase. So you'll find that in the books with 7 quotes. You'll find that in the lectures with 36 quotes. You'll find it in the conversations with 67 quotes. And in the letters, you're going to find it in 213 quotes. I'll give you a couple more examples. If you look up distributing my books as a phrase, that's one of the most famous phrases we have, distribute my books. You'll find 15 quotes in the books, 40 quotes in the lectures, 153 quotes in the conversations, and 466 quotes in the letters. One more example. If we look at publishing my books, 25 quotes in the book, 125 quotes in the lectures, 301 quotes in the conversations, 829 quotes in the letters. What does this tell us? It tells us that even though some people, and there are some, that even believe the letters should be phased out of public access, there are people who think like that. Well, what are you removing? Remember, I said there are 5 ways you know how to know a character. So, I didn't even mention videos as a way of knowing Srila Prabhupada, but these are means and ways that need to be available in print, and not only available in print, but in print in many languages. So that's one practical starting point, is that the GBC needs, and at least in my own opinion, we haven't come to a consensus yet because we're still churning all this on the Sabha. The GBC needs to come to prioritize the accessibility of all of the means of knowing about this character named Srila Prabhupada. Okay, now in a letter to Prana in 1977, not long before Prabhupada left in July, Prabhupada says, does he think you will find something else in these transcriptions that are not in these books? He asked that question. And what's the answer? Yes, of course we're going to find stuff. It's not that Prabhupada's saying, don't look outside my books. Don't listen to my lectures. don't read my conversations. No. And I think it's been very the quote has been taken out of context and not understood properly. So,
could I just insert for a moment? This business of context is so important because we see this all the time. Devotees will take things out of context, or more specifically, they just don't know the context, but they'll grab that quote and start beating that drum, as opposed to examining the whole topic and getting all of Srila Prabhupada's quotes on a particular topic. That seems to be one of the fundamental notions of vanipedia, yeah?
Correct. Yes, that's what vanipedia is doing.
So let's just shift to vanipedia for a moment, Vishnumurti Prabhu. What are you trying to do with this? And not trying to do. What have you accomplished in this whole area of Prabhupada being the preeminent Shiksha Guru?
Well, we're in the process of creating an unparalleled manifestation of Srila Prabhupada's teachings. We present all of Prabhupada's teachings in their original format, in text, audio, or video, but we also compile them by subject. And it's an exploration process. So we've been doing this for many years, and different devotees have been involved. And we're seeing that we are filling in the dots, if you like. We're taking we categorize a subject, and then we do our research, and gradually, little by little, those categories get filled up. And a bigger picture than what we originally could perceive of what Prabhupada says on a subject becomes manifest. So it's a tool inside itself to help other devotees do deeper research, and it's a manifestation of Prabhupada's presence just by itself, just to understand Prabhupada beyond our limited search that we might be looking for on a specific subject.
Is it like, I'm very familiar with the Shikshamrita, so this sounds more like Shikshamrita on steroids, yeah?
Totally, yeah. See, Shikshamrita is limited just to the letters, whereas we cover all the teachings, so it's more developed. It's Shikshamrita was the laborious love of Ajamil Prabhu, who spent many years doing that. We're collaborative. So it's very interesting that we have different angles and different devotees who have different talents, different natures. So that adds to the wealth of it.
I just prior to our time together, I was spending time with Vishaka Devi and asking her some questions. And one of the questions I asked was, how does she go about reading and hearing from Srila Prabhupada? And she said that in recent times, she's concentrating on certain topics and then examining Srila Prabhupada's words as it relates to those topics. It seems like vanipedia allows us to really do that well, as long as we just have the fundamental. What do you need? The fundamental search criteria in your brain, or are you making it even easier for devotees?
We make it easier, but you have to be an explorer. You have to want to explore, like deep sea diving into Prabhupada's Vani. So you have to have an exploration nature, not that you just go looking for a quote. I mean, you can go looking for a quote, but the tendency is you'll miss all the other quotes around it. So we do encourage exploration, and yes, we do encourage thematic study. And everyone, we have over 2 million quotes, we have 40,000 categories. All of these are linked to the original.
How many categories?
40,000. Krishna, we tried to understand Krishna. Now, I knew one of our methodologies is to bring to life every personality that Srila Prabhupada addresses in his teachings. So, some personalities we know we can grab hold of that and compile them threadbare because Prabhupada doesn't talk so much about them. So one personality, Krishna, was always haunting me. How are we going to threadbare, bring to life the personality of Krishna? So in 2017, we started a new process. We actually started in Vani quotes to create a page for every sentence of the Krishna book. So we, to make sure we get everything, because the nature is we create a page and then we link the words in the page, and that's how we start categorizing them. So after getting into the Krishna book a little bit, I could see, oh, here's the opportunity to expand Krishna. We had 400 categories before we started. From finishing the Krishna book, from then doing the full Nectar of Devotion, and then all the translations of the Chaitanya Charitamrita and the translations of the Bhagavatam, we now have 4,500 categories, subcategories under Krishna.
So, Preeminent Shiksha Guru, Shiksha is instruction, Vani, the instructions, not the Vabu. Basically, what we're saying is you and your team have created the ability to hear from Srila Prabhupada on any topic. Yeah?
Yes. Well, we're in process. We're a work in progress.
Okay, work in progress. Excellent. I know in our service to the GBC and to ISKCON that we are regularly going to vanipedia, and we have a particular, just giving you feedback, our particular attitude, which I recommend as an attitude, is we're not interested in having, we don't get an idea in our head and then we go out and seek Prabhupada's words to support that idea. Rather, we say, we want to know everything that Srila Prabhupada spoke about this topic so that we can then understand the pros, the cons, the this, the that. One time he's saying one thing, another time, one time he said, one of the famous things, he said, okay, now that we've had I'm paraphrasing, now that we have a press, my spiritual master is happy, and I think it was even maybe 18 months later, we don't need this press. We're gonna go to Dine Nippon and have the printed. We don't need a press. So to understand the totality of what Prabhupada said, then brings forth realization, as opposed to, this is how I think, let me find what Srila Prabhupada. So that's wonderful. Nrsimhananda, let's go back to you. What the Sava, which, by the way, is it a subordinate but separate, subordinate to the GBC, but it is distinct legislative group of devotees, yeah?
Not legislative.
Not legislative, okay.
Advisory.
Advisory, okay.
Right. But understand that when people have had very, very important issues and come as individuals, it's like a twig. You're not very strong, but when you come as a group and you voted on it and you come together, you've discussed it, you analyzed it, you voted on it, then the GBC has to look at it much more seriously. And that's one of the advantages we have. And we have a very august assembly in that group. And it's
a group of about 30 devotees?
We have 27 with a maximum of 35.
Okay.
We meet weekly for 2.5 hours. We discuss various topics. We've been instrumental in getting about four different proposals passed in the last 2.5 years. Some dealing with our own functioning, and some dealing with some of the issues regarding the books. In fact, in looking at the how I've approached the books, Vanipedia has created a real fun detective kind of search that you can do when you're trying to understand what Srila Prabhupada is saying, but it's in many different parts of his compendium. It's maybe in the Bhagavatam, in the CC, in the Gita, and it comes all together. And when you begin to look at it, you say, oh, that's what it means. That's that's the whole picture. And that's the beauty of how reading Srila Prabhupada's books. It can be very exciting, very dramatic, because there's kind of a unknown factor that's waiting to be discovered. And I think that's true. You know, when the letters books first came out, you have to remember that they came out because various leaders were exclusively having access to the letters. So they would use a letter that would advance their agenda, even though there may be another letter that contradicted it. And it became such a widespread phenomena that devotees rebelled and printed those, stole the letters from the archives and printed them.
They stole them.
They stole them and printed them all. I mean, sometimes there's.
And who was this brave soul that decided to steal the letters?
Well, it was Radhakrishna who actually published them.
Really? And Nischinta.
And who?
And Nischinta.
Yeah.
And Nischinta. Yeah. Nischinta is always, he always had that independent spirit.
Well, but he took very seriously when Prabhupada said we have to be independently thoughtful. Took that to the extreme. I want to read just one quick thing here to emphasize a point about Srila Prabhupada's preeminent position. It's from the book The Art of Spiritual Life by Jadharani. Beautiful, wonderful first volume. And she asked him a question about the paintings, and he says, so far as your questions, the demigods mentioned by you appear just like a man, but very beautiful, very nice features. They have fair complexion with golden hue. Golden means milk mixed with a tint of reddish color. Lord Shiva has 2 arms. Garuda is yellow in color. Kapila Dev looks like a human being, as does Kalki. Kalki is bluish. Matsya is in full fish, bluish in color. Kurma is a tortoise color. Now, can any of our gurus speak like that with such authority? Let's get it in context. We would be guessing or maybe pulling something from some other obscure Purana to come up with these things. But Prabhupada is that special. And that's why he had the answer for everything, because he was just purely a pure transmission. And I think that's the distinction that we all make in the Sabba, that, you have no doubts when Prabhupada speaks something, that it is coming from Krishna. And whether we have a guru who's, as wonderful, some of our gurus are exhibiting the most spiritual and wonderful godly qualities, nobody can top the pure devotee. Nobody can actually speak on that level, at least not yet. So it's vital that we educate by proactive means the devotees in these courses that we give, the disciples course, the guru course. The task is to develop these actions and activity and attitudes so that Srila Prabhupada in our institution has that profile and familiarity to all of it, at least available to all of the people who are interested in coming. And in that way, we can move, if the GBC and other groups like the Sava provide means by which this can happen, we could have a second coming of Srila Prabhupada to ISKCON, in the sense that he will manifest out of our familiarity. The more that we make that available in as many means and ways as possible. And I think if you look at Yadavar's film, you see the potential of what that does when you give someone such a well-rounded overview of Srila Prabhupada. It touches the heart. And that's what knowing about him will do. We just aren't up to speed on it yet.
So the Sava's, one of the Sava's missions is to encourage the GBC to provide the means to practically manifest this notion of preeminent Shiksha Guru. Did I get that right?
You got that 100%. Because if there's anything that the Sava should do, it's to keep Srila Prabhupada's profile, his presence in the center. And that can only be done if people have the context of that. And that context can only be done if we have great support by the leaders, not just the GBC leaders, not just the global duty managers, not just the ministers, but most importantly, the temple presidents who are really setting the mood for their flocks.
Well, the congregational leaders also, because that's where 90% of our population exists.
I suppose I use temple presidents as a, congregational leader. They have a, outside temple. It's not an actual temple. Yes, but all leaders, Namhat leaders, congregational leaders, it has to work, it has to be promoted to work on that scale. And that needs to be a priority from the top.
So Vishnumurti Prabhu, interestingly, you are a member of Sava also, yeah?
Correct, yes, since March.
So you're just recently appointed as a member. So from your vanipedia mission, so to speak, are you feeling encouraged with this effort that Sava is making?
Definitely. You see, like I said, this is 32 years of service for me. And I was asked a few times to be part of the SPPT, Srila Prabhupada's Position Committee. And I never got around to it. And then finally I did in 2013. So, I was there just at the end when they launched the foundational document in 2014. And for me, this was like, wow, the society is caught up. We're really going in a wonderful direction now with this. I went to Ravindra Sarup when we finally launched it and it was public. I said, now it's official, we can love Prabhupada. It was like that sort of thing. All the barriers had been taken away. But then, we've seen since 2014, there's a lot of work still to be done. We have a foundational document, but we have a philosophy of Vani, but we don't have a culture. So the work is the implementation. And even the GBC document says that it's not for casual reading, it's for implementation. So how do we implement? Yeah, this is a big issue. And the Sabba, I have found, because it's advisory and Brahmanically inclined, where there is reflection and discussion, it is poised to help the GBC to be able to make long-term decisions.
Can I ask both of you a question that I humbly think I already know the answer? Would that be all right?
Yes.
Why is it in our society that the GBC comes up with often excellent ideas, puts them into resolutions, or in this case, came up with a wonderful document, this book that we're talking about, and then from that point, not that much gets done? Why is that?
Who do you want? You want me to speak first?
Yeah, go ahead.
The GBC is an extremely intelligent group of people. I've had the bird's eye view now for 2.5 years. I respect, all of them for their contributions, their devotion. They are amazing people, every single one of them, special. But they're not necessarily trained as managers. And the GBC has kind of these two phases. One is they're just supposed to go around and inspire people in their rounds, in their sadhana, to read Prabhupada's books, to be very sadhu-like. And then the other hand, there's this movement that just expanded as fast as the technology, and they're supposed to know how to manage an international worldwide movement with legal issues in different countries and culture wars and meanwhile a guru system that's still developing. And it's an almost impossible task for them. One of the things that may happen is that as the older generations of more sadhu-like people disappear, and the more trained from the GBC college managerial people come in to play their role, that implementation rather than formation will become much more expedited. And I think that that's what we are having to be patient about, because we have a lot of wisdom in the GBC on the level of the sanctity of the philosophy, but at the same time, just getting it, how do you get it out there? That really takes a lot of skill, and technology is constantly changing that skill.
Is it that we lack sufficient structure and resource to accomplish the actual implementation?
Well, that group is not going to create an efficient structure, and therefore, because they don't know how to do that, they have help from the strategic planning team and the board dev, but to carry on with what you've done, for example, for the last 6-7 months with these wonderful broadcasts, that's not their forte at this time. Whereas in the future, a GBC may compel groups like yourself, say, hey, we need this. Can you pull it together? And also, they don't have the funds. They don't, like every other religious organization has tithes, has money. The GBC is always working on a shoestring. So that has to be resolved in order for them to have the resources, the staff, to do things properly from a managerial point of view, and do them with best practices, not just do them with kind of wiggle room. You got a GBC.
Is there some quote from Srila Prabhupada that says that every organization needs men and money?
Yeah, of course.
And maybe we have men and women proliferating in the congregations and a few in the temples, but from a hierarchy point of view, we have no men and women and money. That's the fact.
So maybe,
in other words, we don't have the structure.
Well, it's slow in coming. We need to speed it up. That's the fact. There is some structure coming, thanks to your groups and to their wisdom in putting it together. Sava came together because they voted on it. God bless them. They voted on putting the Sava in. Maybe Vishnumurti would like to add to that the issue of why things are kind of slow going in the GBC.
What are your comments on that, Vishnumurti? The difficulty of implementing something.
Maybe we need a Vatican II. Maybe we need a fresh reevaluation.
What does Vatican II mean? Maybe not everybody is aware of Vatican II.
Well, Vatican II was a whole reevaluation of how the Catholic Church was going. So, Prabhupada's movement has been a whirlwind. Prabhupada came alone with this incredible Shakti, this vision, this administrative capacity, and he set it all in motion. His flock came, and who was his flock? Pure-hearted, sincere souls who had melted their hearts, but no previous experience, young by nature, no previous experience. So now we're 50 years plus of ISKCON, 43 years of Prabhupada leaving, and all the first generation are getting very old and disappearing very quickly, and that's just going to speed up. So, I consider myself a little bit of a strategist, And I really, in order for my strategy to work, I put myself into the future. So, I look at generation 1 and generation 2 as being very time, place, and circumstance realities. Generation 1 are the devotees who joined the movement when Prabhupada was on the planet, and generation 2 are the devotees who joined when the first generation was still on the planet. That's how I do generation 1 and generation 2, and they're both unique. Now, one day all things will come to pass. The first generation will disappear quicker than slower. The second generation will steadily follow behind them. And then generation 3 and generation 30 and generation 300, they're all the same. They are just Shiksha disciples of Srila Prabhupada, and they are Shiksha disciples of contemporary Diksha Gurus and Shiksha Gurus. That's their definition. And how do we create an ISKCON? And this is going forward, because so many times we say we have to change, we have to evolve, but we know many things are set the way they are. So rather than trying to change what's existing, let us go out of the box and discuss what do we believe is the best phenomena of a successful ISKCON that's in motion for ISKCON 100, for example. Basically speaking, generation 2 will be gone at ISKCON 100. So what will it take? Gurus of the future, GBCs of the future, temples of the future, and to see how we can actually set up principles that allow that to be as successful as possible.
And I would add to that also BBTs of the future, managers, because they are containing all of this knowledge, and they're responsible to get it out there.
So we are running a little bit over, and I just have a question that is a kind of like some different words to what you were saying, Vishnumurti, and then ask each of you to respond. Okay. Approximately 1.5% of Srila Prabhupada's disciples have taken up the position of guru. If 1.5% of Srila Prabhupada's disciples, meaning generation 2, grand disciples, if 1.5% of those devotees become gurus, we will have, within 30 years, 40 years, over 3,000 gurus. How are we going to hold and keep unified this society? And is this not one of the single biggest, if not the biggest, challenge? We'll start with Vishnumurti so that we can end with Nrsimhananda. What is your thought on that issue?
Well, we just have to do it right. Prabhupada said, become 10 million acharyas. And he said, make that organization.
Make that organization for 10 million acharyas.
Correct. So, and for me, what I do with that is, because you've got to get the numbers, right? So, first of all, we don't just define Diksha Gurus, but we define Shiksha Gurus. So 10 million Shiksha Gurus. But we have to define something much more important than that. We have to define that all of those Shiksha Gurus are Shiksha disciples of Srila Prabhupada. So when we actually, and this is it, again, our experiment of Guru Tattva with an ISKCON, we just went in a direction and backtracked and patched it up and etc. We still have not done now we've coming up with Prabhupada's position. Now it's more than him being the founder acharya. He's the active living presence in the heart of devotees generationally. He's the soul of ISKCON. So he is the preeminent Shiksha Guru. So his shelter is there. So, we can have, if we have gurus who are properly situated at Prabhupada's lotus feet, we can have those 10 million acharyas. We can have those 10 million teachers. They can give Diksha to 5 and 10 and 20 and 30 devotees. It doesn't have to be this super dupa guru that we've been born into from the time Prabhupada left, from Prabhupada's example at the time that Prabhupada left.
Mm.
Another approach, and this needs good discussion, you know, to take this through. There's been a lot of discussion going on. It needs continued discussion. I believe our guru system is not sustainable, and it does not lead to. Why did Prabhupada say 10 million acharyas? So that people can be very easily become Krishna conscious. That was his concern.
That's right.
Why did he say, you know, like follow Lord Chaitanya's instruction and become a guru? Just so that you can help people become Krishna conscious. That's why you become a guru. It's as a service. So anyway,
Okay,
we need
we're good on that. Nrsimhananda Prabhu will end. What is your answer to that challenging near term, meaning just 30 years from now or future?
Well, first of all, if you look at those devotees whose spiritual masters fell down, who still continue after 30, 40 years to be steady in their service and have a very strong Shiksha relationship with Srila Prabhupada, you understand that it may or may not be the Diksha Guru who becomes the preeminent influence in a disciple's life. They will always be respected, but it is a very personal experience. So the principle of how you create more and more acharyas is to actually take the burden off of their heads. It's not that hard if you're following the principles to be a guru. You don't have to be a superman or a superwoman. You just have to teach and offer what Srila Prabhupada has given us. And automatically, you'll see that the love for that guru will develop, even because he's giving you Prabhupada. It's just an automatic process. You'll be thankful. Just like the mother is thankful, more thankful when you give a gift to the child than when you give a gift to herself. It's just a selfless love. So I think that we need to really look at our courses and see how we can emphasize more this need to give Srila Prabhupada as the preeminent Shiksha Guru, so that in our guru courses and in our disciple courses, it becomes a predominant theme, not just a subject that you study. And that way we can begin at least there to enable and empower, because being a guru, you're empowered by the previous acharya, and that's where it comes from. He is the moon. We may be stars, but we'll never be the moon. So we want to keep that, just like Lord Chaitanya is the moon, Prabhupada's our moon. We want to keep our attention from that comes from the light of the moon. That's how we have to go forward much more quickly.
Thank you so much, both of you, for illuminating these points. You're doing such wonderful service. I really appreciate your time. I know your time is valuable. I find this to be a great way to end this nine series of discussions on Srila Prabhupada as our preeminent Shiksha Guru. I'd like to just say one other final word. Both of you, please stay safe. This COVID is a serious disease, so please stay safe. Thank you so much. All glories to Srila Prabhupada. Hari Bol.
Srila Prabhupada ki jai. Hare Krishna.
Jai.